It's time for Free Speech Fridays. We get two free-speaking, free-thinking New Zealanders and we talk about the events of the week and what is happening in the world as we know it. Now, this morning we're going to welcome a new participant, an old mate of mine. He's been a journo in television. I think he's worked in radio. He's been a lobbyist in business. And now he's just a Kiwi, getting by, making do, taking care of the family. His name's Mark Champion, and he joins us. Also, part of this is a geographic spread. He joins us from gorgeous Dunedin. Mark, nice to have you on board, mate.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. And alongside him, well, she's a Free Speech Friday veteran, really, Judith Collins, the National MP for Papakura. Judith, just before we start, do you have any Labour Party policy to announce that you want to share with us or not?
I think we'll wait to see how the day unfolds, Sean.
That was pretty remarkable, and there is absolutely no indication that Nicola wasn't bang on the mark because there's been no denial, Mark.
No, absolutely not. I mean, she's got a rich vein of information coming from somewhere, and as a former journalist, I could speculate about where that might be, but
well, go on.
Everyone,
well, why not then? Speculate about where that might be coming from.
I mean, this is gold. She's on a rich vein, and it's obviously tax, so it raises questions around public service, perhaps the Treasury.
Yeah.
But given the porous nature of the Labour caucus at the moment, it could be coming from someone inside who's yet to jump across the benches.
Yeah, Judith, I think Mark's hit on something here, and I said on Monday, or on Tuesday morning after the announcement of the cabinet reshuffle, I mean, Kiri Allan dead in the water, gone, said sorry, resigned, everything, move on, she's a civilian now. But the real story, I think, this week is the disunity inside Labour, the resignation, the petulant resignation of David Parker, and now what appears to be, what was the word you used, Mark, a very porous kind of Labour machine.
Yeah, and it's a Labour machine that has been pretty solid despite its ructions over the past 5 years.
Yeah. So, Judith, is that the story, that Labour's fallen apart or there's disunity there?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, with the Kiri Allan matter, people asking lots of questions within the Labour Party about why this was allowed to continue and why Kiri Allan was back at work, and obviously there was something going on. And I just feel too that there's probably a lot of hurt that Kiri Allan was given an awful lot of leeway while others probably weren't. And you've got sitting in that caucus, and I don't wish to name anybody because I actually don't know who was the leaker, but you've got people in that caucus like Stuart Nash, who has a record on leaking out of cabinet.
Only if he gets paid, like, Judith.
And then you've got, I'm not sure about that, but anyway, then you've got David Parker, who was given permission for some godforsaken reason to go off and trawl through the details of everybody he felt was a bit rich and to try and find the details, and then for no reason other than to find out what was there. Well, actually, it was all about a wealth tax. And so he and Grant Robertson were obviously tied up to that. Then that gets knocked on the head for at least this before the election by Hipkins. And then you've got, who are the others you've got? Oh, you've got Michael Wood. He must be feeling a little bit upset too. And I thought yesterday when I saw him in Select Committee in the House, he looked very chipper. So who knows what's going on?
You're an evil woman, Judith Collins.
Well, look, I think we need to add a couple more to that list.
Yes,
we need to add Phil Twyford, who's sitting in the back, now reduced to asking Patsy questions. That must hurt. And then we've also got David Clark, who didn't cover himself in glory. And we've got a whole range of characters who have every reason to poke the stick.
Guys, isn't the reality too, though, and Judith, as someone who has led a major political party in this country, you have the authority over your caucus and your colleagues, as long as your leadership ensures that they will survive, that you'll win the next election, that gives you an awful lot of real power inside a political grouping. And I look at Hipkins taking over. I think he managed to negotiate some sort of deal with the Maori caucus, who were about to explode. But now that the polls are telling the Labour MPs he's not going to get their jobs back for him, he loses a whole lot of authority.
Yes, exactly. So the point about this is, frankly, survival. And that's exactly right. And going into an election, those that aren't staying, what have they got in this? They're looking at Chris Hipkins. They're saying, is he really going to be there after the election? Is there anything that I could get from him? And the answer is no. What possible job is he going to give David Clark or Bill Twyford or whatever it is? What is he going to do? And the answer is not much at all. And that's the point. So they're seeing that their timing is out. They've seen people like Trevor Mallard get sent off to Ireland and a very nice job there, having been looked after by Ardern all the way through. And given all of his bad behaviours, they're looking at themselves and saying, and what about me?
And I get hung out to dry. Yeah.
Yep.
Geez, Mark, can you get it back from here? If the country says we love GST off food, we're going to vote Labor because we want that so much. Is there a way back, or does it look kind of terminal?
No, I think it's terminal. And I think really what we're looking at, and we've looked at for a long time, and COVID was just an interim where decisions needn't have been made. We had a vacuum where action really wasn't required. We shut the country down. I think what we're looking at is a capability vacuum, which I haven't seen in politics for a very long time.
Yeah. Judith, you guys, are you having your caucus meetings and just chilling the champagne, ready to pop the corks on the 15th of October?
Not at all. Not at all, Sean.
No.
We're very aware that this can go down to the wire, and you never know what people are going to do in that polling booth. There's always a proportion, it could be 10, 20% that go into a polling booth not quite sure what they're going to do, and then they make a gut decision or they make a last-minute decision. And so you just never know. And I think I'm going to my 8th election. Yeah. I think, I've seen a lot of things in this, and you get the most amazing surprises. But we are very much preparing with a policy that we've launched. I think we're up to about 27 policies now from account. Out, we're getting policy out, we're doing what we can, but every day there's another distraction from a falling apart government.
Yeah. What do we think, guys, of taking GST off food?
Well, who wants to speak first? Look, honestly, I just thought that is the dance of the desperates. This is the last throw of the dice. For goodness sake, anyone who's tried to work out the Australian silly system of, is a hamburger.
Yeah, but Australia's doing better than us economically, Judith. It's not like the downfall of their civilization.
Yeah,
we put man on the moon. We can have a discriminatory GST.
Yeah, they also, by the way, have 26 million people. They use their natural resources, and they actually are open for business with the world, while we're still sitting around as a country and with a government that's frightened of foreigners. So, look, honestly, I just, there's no comparison. But really, the cost of a system that has to discriminate between a lettuce leaf and the meat patty in the hamburger is just nuts. And Barbara Edmonds, who's the Minister of Revenue, she must know better, as well as every other tax expert in the country. And as a former Minister of Revenue and tax lawyer, let me tell you, this is madness. The administration costs are huge, but also the big winners would be the big supermarkets.
Because they'd take the savings and not pass them on.
Prices.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you've got another $500 million at least being spent on this, when what we really need to do is get kids back at school, get the economy going, get people their health needs that they need, and just stop being so silly like this.
All right. Mark?
Well, I think the other issue is Grant Robertson prepared to swallow the second dead rat of the week? And the cracks we're seeing in the most vital political relationship between the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, having to suck it up publicly on more than one tax issue, raises some real questions about what David Parker is, where he sees his future. I kind of disagree, Sean, that it's perhaps not petulance, but potentially a leadership run. It's not the first time we've seen him position himself like that. And if you were to position yourself with the heart of the Labour Party, I would say that David Parker's position is considerably more comfortable than Hipkins.
Wow. Okay. Before or after the election?
That's the question.
Well, it is. I think that is a question. Labour have swapped horses, midstream before. Gosh, he was only bought in, start of this year.
It's the Mike Moore factor.
Yeah. And Mike almost did it, Judith.
That's right. Well, there's another point, though, I'd say to you there, Mark and Sean, is that where's David Parker going to be on the list? Because he's a list-only candidate, and the person who has the biggest say on where he's going to be is Chris Hipkins. So is he going to be back at all? And the same with Robertson. Robertson, I think he'll still get a high list ranking. But the other thing is, if they start losing even more votes, as one suspects, given the disarray they're in, are either of them even going to be back?
Guys, can I just say I'm enjoying this? All we need is a bottle of Chardonnay. Well, and for it to be, we should do this in real life, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because I'm greatly enjoying this. Look, I want to move on to a topic that isn't strictly political, but it's one of the issues that's certainly here on the platform we're interested in. That is free speech and the co-governance meetings that this guy, Julian Batchelor, has been holding, as he is allowed to under, in the wonderful open society and democracy we have around the country. And I haven't been to one. I have a notion, because we've interviewed him a few times, of what the content of those meetings is, and the book that he's written and sells for 50 cents or $1 or whatever. But in recent weeks, increasingly, counter-protesters, as they call themselves, from various groups, some of them anti-far aligned, have ramped up their campaign against them. They've infiltrated what are private meetings. Police are deploying to most of these meetings now. It is reduced to the point where they don't say where the meetings are being held. You basically get in a secret phone thing. They say what time the meeting is in town, and then they individually tell people of the venue to try and stop the protests. It's a pretty sorry pass, isn't it, Judith, in New Zealand, where we're not tolerant enough to let people who we disagree with get together and have a yarn about ideas we might not agree with.
Yes, and I'd probably describe those that are trying to break up meetings where people are speaking or listening to what they want to hear as almost a rent-a-mob type mentality, which is shutting down free speech because you don't want people to say what they want. In the result, of course, is all they're doing is that they're giving this man who I've never met and haven't read his books more publicity, and turning him into a martyr of such. So they are, of course, truly silly people who want to shut down free speech because it's not the speech that they want.
Yeah. The other thing is, Mark, we now have the Electoral Commission on, well, they're not going to say who's complained, trying to constrain or put the arm on Julian Batchelor under the Electoral Act, and that his booklet or his pamphlets are political advertising, which, to be frank, having read them and looked at the act, is bloody ridiculous. But there is a real conflict here, and I've got to say, I don't like it. I appreciate Julian Batchelor's right to say what he wants, and I also appreciate the protesters' right to protest what they want.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree, but it's not the first time that we've seen cracks like this emerge. And I think of the Halt All Racist tours. Now, I'm dating myself here, but, at a time when New Zealand was so divided over the Springbok tour, that the right to protest became a right to confront the Red Squad, and police acting under pretty strict instructions about which side was going to win. So it's not as though we haven't seen it before. And I think the Electoral Commission will probably pull its head in at some point, realising that they have come down on the wrong side of free speech. But, I see it as a sign that there's division, and that those divisions have emerged without a public discourse or, in fact, an opportunity to cast a vote.
Yeah.
And that needs to be lanced.
Yeah.
I've never seen the country so divided since probably those Springbok tour days.
Yeah.
Where people, it's really very divided, and people are very angry that they can't have a say without being told that they're racist, when actually what they're speaking against is frankly racism in many ways.
Yeah.
So if you think about some of the things, the poor stuff, you remember when I raised those issues when I was leader of the National Party, I was condemned as making it up or
do you ever
whatever.
think I told you so, Judith?
True.
You ever I told you so?
Do.
Yeah.
I often do. I often think that. I don't always say it, but it is true that to shut down speech because it's not what you want to hear is never done by people who have a democracy at the heart of what they want.
No. You're a hotbed in Dunedin of this, and I'd say generally I look at the South and the Deep South in particular, Mark, and say that it's very conservative and it's so far away from Auckland or the East Cape or the far north. Dunedin, I think, because its student population has a few dissenters down there. Do you agree with Judith's a country divided sort of scenario?
Very much so. There's a very strong feeling down here, one side or the other, because the majority of the population in Dunedin is fed by the government, be it the Polytech, the university, or the health DHB.
Yeah.
And so they are reliant on the government paycheck. And Dunedin, having, I think, only ever in recent history elected one MP other than Labour, I think it was 1975, wasn't it, Richard Wall, is a Labour stronghold.
Yeah.
And the irony of that is that Labour doesn't bother spending any money down here because their votes will never be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And probably the other parties regard it as in terms of an electoral investment, a bit of a lost cause. And they keep electing characters like Claire Curran and David Clark, who really don't serve the electorate.
Look, okay, let's accept then amongst the three of us, and I think most of my listeners would agree with you, or the people listening. I hate saying my listeners, I don't own them. Why, your campaign slogan, let's get New Zealand back on track, Judith, for the National Party. Winston's got, let's take the country back. Labour's we're in it for you or whatever. No one is campaigning, and I don't hear anyone as we fast approach the real campaign saying, let's get together, let's stop this disunity and this polarisation in our country. Does that mean we've accepted it, that this is just the way it's going to be from now on? Because I do, Mark, even in the days, and we knew each other back then, of the Springbok tour, I accepted that there was some fundamental, Kiwiness, idea of nationhood or togetherness. And God, I think of the Commonwealth Games in Christchurch that drove us forward. But no one really seems to be saying we've lost that, Judith.
Well, I think we are saying it with the back on track, because it's when we're having meetings around the country and when we're talking to people, this is one of the issues that comes up. But you can't get back on track if you're not together. It's like, saying to the Labour Party caucus, guys and girls, how about you all focus on the real people, which are the people who, are paying your bills, by the way. But they can't, because they're all over the place fighting each other. So you've got to be together to be back on track. So I think it's inherent to that. But I'm feeling a lot of division, and people, I have to say, are now feeling able to come and say what they really think.
And that is important, because we're not going to solve these problems unless we can talk about them in a free speech context.
Yes.
Mark, do you think someone should be saying, let's get together? Should someone be doing rainbows and, holding
think
some little kid's hand at Waitangi?
I think it was only 2 years ago that we demonstrated that was always possible. And you think of the first lockdown as being probably a high point of Kiwis pulling together. But the COVID hangover and all the issues that got swept under the carpet, but were pretty evident in the first term of the Labor government, have reared their heads again, and people feel as if they don't have a say. I agree with Judith. There's just not that freedom to express the way that you feel.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to if we're going to deal with it. Look, I have to ask you just slightly flippantly, either of you suddenly worried about little green men from other planets after the Senate hearings on UFOs seem to be doing the rounds on the internet? I have made the observation that people who are what I now call anti-vax enthusiasts also seem to be taking quite an interest in these Senate hearings. Judith?
Yeah, well, look, I'm more worried about the little green men in Parliament, actually, and I use that in the
little green non-gender specific.
I'm way more concerned about the Green Party and the Maori Party coming in yet again, and where if Labour gets in, they'll be getting in with Rauri Waititi and Debbie Packer.
Daro Packer, yep.
I can't. I'm sorry. I just the thought of those two in government, and the thought of the Greens in government. Again, I told people last time, if you vote for Labour, you'll get the Greens, and they didn't believe me. And what did happen?
That's right. Mark, what do you think? I mean, look, think back to your news days. Oh, we've got some whack job F-15 pilot. He's gone up to Capitol Hill and said, I could tell you about all the aliens, but I'd have to kill you. But people do take this stuff seriously, right?
Well, they seem to, and I saw a little bit of that Congress hearing, and gosh, there was very little substance to it, and it would have been hard to make a documentary about that, frankly.
Yeah, well, I think Paula Penfold and Kate Hanna could do it. It was dangerous and Nazis.
Yeah, but in a week so rich in content, I don't think you needed to lurch across and cover that particular story. I mean, I can't remember a more volatile week in politics since Richard Prebble left.
Actually, yeah, that'd be the comparison. Look, I want to kind of go full circle and come back to that, Judith. I'd make the observation, whatever happened down the road from my place last Sunday night, Kiri Allan has done textbook everything you do to mea culpa this. She has resigned as a minister. She is not going to continue in politics or contest the election. She has, in all her public statements, said it was my fault. She hasn't cried racism or misogyny or played the victim. She says, I screwed up, my fault, I need to go away and sort my stuff out. I get a feeling in my sense of fairness, Judith, that having done that, she's back in Civvy Street now. She's a civilian and we should kind of leave her alone.
Well, I think we are. I mean, I think the point is with her is that it's the leak out of the Labour Party caucus about alleged bullying by Kiri just kept the story going. But the other thing is we keep hearing new bits of the story. So what we really do need to have, and I think Kiri has, as you say, has done the mea culpa and has left politics, or is leaving politics, is for Chris Hipkins to come out with everything that there is, so it doesn't just keep stripping out and keep reminding everybody about her behaviour and what was going on.
But as an individual, Mark, there is a code, and I think she's fulfilled the code. There are bigger stories. The story of David Parker, the story of Grant Robertson, the story of what's happening in the Labour caucus. And I was just going to say, poor old, I feel for her, is I guess what I'm saying.
Look, I agree, but I think Judith is absolutely right. Is that Hipkins hasn't cleaned this out. in a way that protects him. He has quite rightly gone towards supporting her publicly, and the Labour Party has mobilised itself, and there's been a bit of hand-wringing about this potential leader having to walk off into the sunset. But the problem is there are so many a lot of stuff has yet to come out.
Yeah.
You've always got that feeling.
Yeah,
and
it's
until
death
that
by
comes
1,000
out,
cuts. Well, you can't hear
That's
Kiri
right.
now. She doesn't give a stuff. Yeah, interesting week. And as you say, Mark, I think quite a remarkable week in politics, which is why it's been so great having two, and I use the term lovingly, Judith, two old hands like yourself to discuss it. That is a really good yard on Free Speech Friday. We do have to get together with a bottle of wine. Judith, thank you very much indeed. Mark, lovely to have you on board. That wasn't that hard, was it?
Thank you, my friend.
All right, we'll talk again soon. Mark Champion, Judith Collins, our guest on Free Speech Friday.